Part 27. Path to Heaven. Author, Wu Ziyi. Chapter 264. Is this the case? Wei Suo slightly pondered, and then asked, I am going to live in this Haixian city for a long time. If I want to rent a place in the city, where do I go? Apply. In this seafaring city, should there be a place with a ground stove for rent? Senior is going to stay and practice in Haixian city. It is very easy to rent a house. Does the senior see the palace in front of Huang Se? Just go there to register and pay some spirit stone fees. But the land we don't have a sea furnace city in the furnace room. The sharp-faced monk looked at Wei Suodeo. We have a special ground vein under the seafaring city, and it is difficult to communicate the ground fire veins, so we only have a sky fire stove in the seafaring city. Sky stove, Wei Suo frowned. Can this stove be used at night? This day's stove is used to attract sky fire with the array, condensed in the flint, and can be used at night. Only the sky fire accumulated in the flint is limited. If it is used continuously, the general sky fire can only be used for 2 days and 2 days. At night, after that, you have to let the sky furnace regenerate fire power. The pointed-faced monk said. Very well. Wei Suo nodded silently. Since that is the case, then rent a house with a sky stove. Apart from the sky fire furnace, what other predecessors have other requirements? For example, do you want to bring linked yen? Pointed face monk said. The residences with sky fire furnace are all in the inner city of mid-levels. Our Haixian city is the higher the aura is, the more ordinary residence with a sky fire is 150 lower grade spirit stones a month. A better residence with a spirit field is 210 lower grade spirit stones a month. These are not included in Haixian city. The cost of staying. After he paused, the sharp-faced monk planned for Wei Suo and said, the cost of staying in our Haixian city is a bit high. If there is nothing in the predecessor's urgency to refine, we should stop and practice in another city. The system is more cost-effective. In our Haixian city, closed-door cultivation is the best. Because no matter whether you rely on spirit stone cultivation or refining immortality medicine, you can absorb a certain amount of aura, which can make the cultivation entry faster. Then you will take us to rent a house with a sky stove and linked yen. It is better to have more than 4 or 5 quiet rooms, Wei Suo said indifferently, expressionlessly. Okay, that's okay. There are at least 5 or 6 quiet rooms in the residence with the sky fire furnace room and linked yen. The juniors will lead the way. Seniors, please follow me. There is nothing in the face of the sharp-faced monk. The unpleasant immediately took the lead in a brisk manner. Less than a scent of incense passed. The sharp-faced monk took Wei Suo and others into the 2-story yellow pavilion he had ordered. The whole body of this pavilion is built with a crystal coral reef close to the jade. In the hall, there are several monks with different costumes. When talking with a disciple who is wearing a yellow robe, it should be in rented accommodation. Seniors want to rent a place in Haixian city. The Haixian sect disciples in this loft seem to recognize sharp-faced monks, and now a slightly chunky Haixian sect disciple came over and was not in harmony. The sharp-faced monk replied and made a salute directly at Wei Suo, very politely asked. This predecessor wanted to rent a house with linked yen and Tianhuo furnace house. The sharp-faced monk immediately flattered and rushed to answer for Wei Suo. Seeing Wei Suo nodded blankly, this disciple of the Haixian sect did not dare to neglect, and immediately took out a roll of white silk. After his consciousness was swept away, the disciple of the Haixian sect brightened his eyes. Said, there are 2 places in the house with linked yen and Tianhuo furnace rooms, one of which has a higher level of Tianhuo furnace, and is a 72 Tianhuzuk furnace. The firestones used are the best fire-absorbing crystals. It has been used for 3 consecutive days, and the other sky stove has a lower level. It is just an ordinary 32 fire snake stove, which can be used for 2 consecutive days. The high level of the sky stove is 240 grade spirit stone for 1 month, and the level is low. Some of them are 200 inferior spirit stones in January, which does not include the cost of spirit stones staying in Haixian City. I don't know where the seniors want. This is the residence of the 72 Skyfire Suzaku furnace, Wei Suo said without hesitation. Seeing that Wei Suo was so refreshing, this disciple of the immortal sect immediately looked more respectful. The residence here is to pay the spirit stone fee for a month, and wait until the month is over before paying the spirit of the next month. Stone fee. After the pause, the disciple of the Haixian sect reminded again. However, during this period, the senior still went to the Donglei Pavilion, where our Haixianzong specializes in staying fees, to check the spirit symbols and pay the spirit stone once every 10 days. Fees. Of course, if the seniors are not afraid of us disturbing us, and they are too lazy to move, then our Haixianzong will also have disciples to collect from the residence where the seniors rented. Suo Buduo said that he directly took out 240 low-grade spirit stones and handed them to the monk Haixianzong. Brother Lin, this disciple of Haixianzong, took another spirit stone, while summoning another disciple of Haixianzong, so that the disciple of Haixianzong took a red jade card. Bring this injunction symbol on your body and you can move into the residence where you rented. It is probably because Wei Suo hired a sharp-faced monk, so this Haixian sect disciple did not explain much. When he handed the red jade card to Wei Suo, he only said so. As soon as Wei Suo collected the red jade card, he waved his hand at the sharp-faced monk without a word and turned away. Although he and Jiya have changed their looks now, Jiya is holding Han Weiwei, but it is still a bit conspicuous. He didn't want to hit any monk on the Chinese stingy boat. He was recognized, and there were some unpredictable troubles out of thin air. Seeing that Wei Suo paid such expensive rent without blinking, the sharp-faced monk paid more respect to Wei Suo. By the way, before I entered the city, I heard that something happened to you in Haixian City. Seniors are talking about Dong Chaizong? It can be said that Dong Chaizong is not qualified to receive that high-level ancient treasure. One is not as good as the Wang family and the Hua family, and even the spirit-level intermediate magic weapon. Without the Zongmen, I suddenly got a spirit-level high-level magic weapon, and it's no wonder that the disciples under the door will be hot-eyed and can't help but steal this treasure and escape. What are the larger square cities in Haixian City? In the seemingly casual chat between Wei Suo and the sharp-faced monk, the sharp-faced monk led Wei Suo into the inner city of Haixian City. Closer, I saw that within the tens of miles of the top of Haixian City, they were covered with a layer of white light, and the scenes in it, except for the statue of Haixian, could not be seen. Too clear. In addition to the area enveloped by the white spirit light, above the half-mountain of Haixian City are tower-shaped buildings. These tower-shaped buildings are almost the same shape, relatively square, with the cornice picked out at the top. The difference is that the lower the floor, the more crowded the building, and the more upward, the larger the tower-shaped building and the more open the surroundings. Each building below is wrapped in the green light mask, and the building closest to the top is wrapped in the red light. I saw that the sharp-faced monk brought Wei Suo and others into the eastward position of Haixian City, and the place closest to the top of the white phoenix enveloped in the red glazed buildings. After a moment, the red gleaming flash, the sharp-faced monk and Wei Suo walked out of it, but Jiya did not follow behind. The sharp-faced monk led the way all the way, always leading Wei Suo to a very large area called Wangjia Business, which was obviously in front of the gate of the large square city. Along the way, Wei Suo was fully aware of the precious land of Haixian City. Although the scope of this island is only slightly larger than that of Lingyu City, and it also has to pay the cost of the spirit stone, it should be because the aura in the seafaring city can slightly increase the speed of the monks' cultivation rate, so the number of monks rented, on the contrary, it is several times more than Lingyu City, packed densely. Even Wei Suo rented a house, which was just 100 feet square, a front of more than 30 feet of Lingtian and a 3-story building at the back, such as a tower pavilion next to each other. With the Lingyu City there is no way to compare heavenly residences. For this reason, Wei Suo also asked the sharp-faced monk why he didn't go up high, but only built 3 or 4 floors of pavilions at most, squeezed like horse honeycombs. Upon questioning, Wei Suo learned that the original Haixianzong still exerted a lot of energy in order to prevent the spiritual energy dissipated from the spiritual veins from flowing out of Haixian city quickly. Reiki is confined to the ground to below 10 feet. Therefore, if you build further up, there is no aura, which means nothing at all. The largest Fang city in Haixian city is the Wang family business of this royal family. Now Weizhuo just hopes that there are so many monks in the city, and the various resources of Fang city in the city will be more abundant, allowing him to buy what he wants. 2. This senior, come to our Wangjia firm, would you like to buy something or sell something? The salesperson who was in charge of this Wangjia firm seemed to be no stranger to sharp-faced monks. Was far away seeing the sharp-faced monk leading Wei Suo to a distance. A young clerk wearing a light black SE suit greeted him. I have something worth noting that I want to buy and sell. Wei Suo looked at the 26-year-old young clerk and said, just ask me to take you directly to your shopkeeper. See the shopkeeper. The young clerk wearing a light gray suit immediately heard a sneer from the corner of his mouth. I don't know how many transactions of spirit stones our predecessors have. Our shopkeeper generally trades under 20,000 spirit stones. Will not come in person. It seems that the strength of the Wang family in Haixian city is indeed no less than that of a big door. Even my one-time cultivation is not very much in my eyes. Seeing this, young clerk seemed a little bit contemptuously. Wei Suo said with a blank expression, how many trading of spirit stones depends on your shopkeeper. Anyway, it's just what I want to sell, and the value should not be lower than 30 or 40,000 spirit stones. What, 3 or 4,000 spirit stones? At this time, this person just thought that Wei Suo did not know the market in Haixian city. Some young shop assistants who despised him suddenly stayed for a while and immediately sighed, Senior, please follow me. After that, turn around and lead the way ahead. Path to Heaven. Author, Wu Ziyi. Chapter 265. Wei Suo asked the sharp-faced monk to wait outside the city of Jiafang and followed the young clerk into a separate elegant room. After a while, the young clerk led a Confucian who wore a light green blouse and walked in. As soon as the Confucian came in and saw Wei Suo, he greeted with a smile, in the next Wang Xiao, it is the shopkeeper of this square city. I don't know if this Taoist wants to sell or buy something. At first sight, the name looked like a Confucian who was in his 30s and had no need to confess his face, and his attitude was very chic, but Wei Suo was also in awe. The shopkeeper named Wang Xiao of the Wangjia business firm turned out to be a monk who divided the mind into threefold. Here I want to buy something. Although I was shocked in my heart, Wei Suo said quietly, at the same time, I sold a batch of materials that can be used for refining on the monsters. Let's look at what Dai wants to sell first. This Jingshui Confucian, who is clearly in a high position among the royal family of Haixian city, said with a smile, I listened to this disciple in my shop. Dai, the things you want to sell are not of low value. I'm afraid it won't pile up here. Can't stack them. Upon hearing Wei Suo's words, the boy in the black suit standing behind the Confucian respectfully frowned, and the unbelieving flashed in his eyes. There are more than 10 square feet in this elegant room anyway, very spacious, what can't be stacked? But at a glance, we saw more than 10 Nabeo capsules in Wei Suo's hand. The young boy in the black suit suddenly changed, and the awe was revealed for the first time in his eyes. Seeing that Wei Suo had taken out dozens of Nabeos at once, the Sergeant Ruth suddenly flashed in his eyes and said, I saw a lot of things that Taoist friends want to sell, then follow me. After speaking, the Confucius in the blue shirt led the way, leading Weizhuo into a very empty room in the back, at least hundreds of square meters. Should it be almost here? After entering the storeroom, the Confucius in the blue shirt looked at Wei Ropewei with interest. Wei Suo nodded, without much talk, and poured all the things in his treasure bag directly. So many monsters. The Confucius in green shirt and the young boy in black clothes standing behind him were shocked. To tell the truth, at first glance, most of the monsters that Weizhuo took out of the Nebao capsule are not particularly high, and they are all below the 4th level. But this number is really terrifying. Just a glance at a glance, piled up like a mountain, there are at least 4 or 5,000 heads. Is this monk? In the past 10 years, the monsters that have been hunted have been carried on the body, haven't they been sold? If it weren't for these monsters and animals, it seemed that they had already been processed, and the blood and flesh in them were gone, otherwise the warehouse could not be able to accumulate. The reaction of the Confucian Kingshi and the young boy in the black suit did not surprise Weisuo. In addition to the thousands of monsters and corpses obtained in Guhuizhuang, he also got at least 1,000 monsters in the Stingy Sea. The body of the beast. Weisuo retained a part of it for future refining exercises, and none of the high-level monsters like the black bat demon dragon were taken out, but now there are at least about 4,000 in number. Ordinary monks, even with good luck, can hunt 3 or 4 monsters above level 3 on average every day. It takes 3 or 4 years to hunt so many monsters. In addition, ordinary monks are required to purchase magical tools to enhance their strength, and they are all closed to practice. Where is it possible to hunt monsters every day? Therefore, under normal circumstances, monks under the 1st level of imagination can only hunt down so many monsters in at least 10 years. This day, these monster beasts, have all been taken away, although the Confucian scholar in shock was shocked, but the business was returned to the business. After a little check, I just looked at Weisuo and asked. Such a sentence. Yes, these monster beasts have been taken out by me, and most of them have been used by me for other purposes. There are still some left, Weisuo said, holding a black se in his hand. The treasure bag was handed over to the Qingshui Confucian. The Confucian consciousness swept away, and the on his face suddenly became more dignified. I can immediately report the price of these demon princesses, but the body of these demon beasts is too large, and there are many types. A few hours. Do you want to look at the count here? It doesn't matter, Weisuo glanced at the Qingshui Confucian. Anyway, I can still trust the reputation of your Wang's business firm, and then I want to buy something, and I'm tired of the king's shopkeeper. That's natural. Speaking of the more than 10 cities around, I haven't dared to say that there is a more reputable city than our Wangjia business. Since Daoist friends trust, I will gather more people to come and try to count after half an hour. Finished. After the Confucian Ching proudly said this, he nodded to the young boy in black clothes behind him, and then took Weisuo directly back to the previous separate room, asking, I don't know what other treasures you need to buy. All the things I want to buy are recorded in this jade. Weisuo took out a long and narrow piece of green jade from Nebao directly, and handed it to the Qing Confucian scholar. A flying sword and sword tactics, a consciousness impacting technique, a Xuanhuan flower, a Yangtze bird demon pill, a piece of obsidian crystal, water exquisite, black oil grass. Weisuo was seen at a glance. The things recorded in the jade slips handed over, and the blue-collar Confucian scholars who were divided into 3 layers by the Nianjing realm, took a breath. This Daoist, the value of these things is very amazing. I naturally know this. Weisuo nodded and looked at the Confucian scholar in green shirts. I don't know if these things are sold at your Wangjia business. The Confucian scholar in blue shirt smiled bitterly and said, most of the Taoist friends are extremely rare. My Wangjia business firm is also considered to be one of the largest square cities among the nearby cities. On the list, there is only one flower that is still hydrangea, there are some exquisite water and black oil grass. The rest of the things are not in the hand. What's the price of Huanyang and other things? Weisuo asked silently. I wonder if these things that are not available for the time being, can Wangjia Commercial Bank buy it for you? The Huanyang flower requires a 30,000 grade spirit stone. Shui Linglong 300 grade spirit stone, and black oil grass 500 grade spirit stone. After nodding, he continued, as for the other things that are not available, the Wangjia business house can naturally take the place of the acquisition, only to charge some spirit stone fees. How much do you now have in shui linglong and black oil grass? Wei Suo glanced at the Qing Shui Confucian and said, I don't know how much the cost of the lingxi will be for the acquisition. There are 10 plants in shui linglong, and 6 plants in black oil grass. The Confucian Qing Shen hesitated and said bitterly, originally, the procedure fee was 10%, but the value of these things is very high, all at least 10,000. There are more than one inferior spirit stone, so according to the rules of our firm, it is a fee of 500 inferior spirit stones. Okay, I want all that Huaniang Hua and these watery and black oil grasses. Wei Suo took out a bag of spirit stones, counted out the corresponding spirit stones, and handed them to the Qing Shui Confucian. For the rest, ask the shopkeeper to announce the acquisition. Please Daiyu, please wait. Looking at Wei Suo's large handwriting, the blue-collar Confucian's eyes flashed again, and he immediately pointed his finger and touched a golden bell on one side. Soon after the ringtone came out, a clerk who also wore black clothes and kimono walked in quickly, and after a few words from the Confucius in the blue shirt, the clerk walked out quickly. After a while, then he walked in with 3 white jade boxes. After Wei Suo opened the 3 white jade boxes and looked at them, he nodded with satisfaction, and put the 3 white jade boxes into the Nebeo bag. The Confucius handed back the narrow jade that Wei Suo gave him before, and said, since that, Daiu's other remaining things I want, I will immediately announce the acquisition. Just count the Dao. Those monster materials will still take a while. Don't you know what else Daiu wants to trade with our firm? Is there a high-level Nebeo? Wei Suo asked after a deep thought. Most of the Nebeos in him now are low-level Nebeos, and after knowing the advantages of Nebeos, he was reluctant to sell these Nebeos, but the Nebeos themselves could not be put in Nebeos. Among them, it is really inconvenient to carry many Nebeo bags on your body. Do you think it's inconvenient to bring so many low-level Nebeo? Wei Weizhuo said, but the Confucius in green shirt smiled and said, high-level Nebeo, our Wang's business firm also has one. The storage space is equivalent to 10 low-level Nebeos. If the Taoist wants it, you can exchange them with 10 low-level Nebeos. Suo did not hesitate to take out 10 black SE low-level Nebeo capsules and handed them to Qing Confucian. Suo Xin will wait for the Daoist's things to be counted, and I will call out to fetch them. The Confucian Qing nodded with a smile, and placed 10 Nebeos on the table next to them. Stretching his hand, it turned into a red flame, wrapped in a white teapot on the table, and then he took out a few small petals of white petals from a small bottle in his arms and added this white among teapots. In an instant, a strange fragrance emerged from the white teapot. This is the Qingling flower unique to our Wang family, and it has a good effect on eyesight. If you are interested, you can taste it. The Confucian scholar Qing Wei pours a glass for Wei Suo, and then pours himself a glass. Shallow drink shallowly. Wei Suo knew that this kind of big business wouldn't do anything. He took a sip in peace, only to feel the fragrance of his lips and teeth, and a cool breath rushed into his eyes, and it was really effective. So drinking tea while chatting a few words casually, after a while, I saw that the black monk who Weizhuo first saw quickly walked in and took a roll of white silk respectfully passed it to the Qing Shui Confucian. There are 437 enchanting deities and 4,203 enchanting beasts. According to the price of our Wangjia firm, it is a total of 123,400 inferior spirit stones. Qingshan Confucian, after unfolding the white silk and carefully glancing at the above record, he handed it to Wei Suo. This is a detailed list with the price of each item. If Daiu is dissatisfied with the contents, it can be pointed out. Yes, I still trust Gifang. It's at this price. Wei Suo just glanced and nodded. The Confucius in the blue shirt saw Wei Suo's so refreshing look, and his eyes flashed slightly. When the disciples in the store picked up the lingxi and a high-end Nebeo of Zaijian, Wei Suo took it, and when he was ready to leave, I saw that he was hesitant for a while. Afterwards, he made up his mind and said, "This Taoist friend doesn't know how to call it." In fact, other things the Taoist friend wants are very rare things for the monks. There may not necessarily be a monk to take out the transaction, we will help you buy it, and it will be difficult to get it for a while. But there is a way, maybe it can help Daiyu. Oh? What method? Wei Suo suddenly stopped suddenly. I know that there will be an exchange meeting between monks. This exchange meeting between monks will have many good things that are not normally seen on the market, but this exchange meeting can only be attended by monks in divided periods. And general monks in divided periods are also inaccessible, Qing Shui Confucian said. Which student has figured out how many spirit stones Wei Suo currently has in his body? Even mathematics has always been despised by book friends as a teacher of physical education and is afraid to make mistakes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Path to Heaven. Author, Wu Ziyi. Chapter 266. Divisional Monks Exchange Meeting. The general divisional monks cannot enter. Wei Suo looked at it. Listening to the shopkeeper means that you can take me to this exchange meeting. Dao, you said it well. Qing Shui Confucian nodded. I am one of the regulars of this exchange meeting, but I am indeed qualified to take you to this exchange meeting. The shopkeeper Wan can introduce me to this exchange meeting. Is there anything I want to do? The Taoist is also a wise man, and he doesn't need to hide anything. The Confucius in the blue shirt smiled with a smile. I just saw that the Taoist is not comparable to that of a normal monk. After all, for a business like ours, the more Dao friends you have the ability to make, the better the business is, and the Dao you are quite rich. It is estimated that there are not many good things that can be exchanged on the body. Join this exchange meeting. It is also good for the monks participating in the exchange meeting. It is not to ask Daiyu to do anything for me. In this case, it should be owed to the king's shopkeeper. Once Wei Suo nodded silently. I don't know what to do to join this non-public exchange meeting, except for someone to recommend it. Any other conditions? In addition to being at least a monk in divided periods, there is a condition that at least 100,000 inferior spirit stones must be on the body. Or it is equivalent to 100,000 inferior spirit stones and is ready to be traded. Qingshan Confucianism explained, this is also to prevent the kind of monks who don't have a family, but just go in and see. This condition has no problem for Taoists. Wei Suo nodded. When did this monk exchange meeting start? It's just the day after tomorrow. If the Daoist wants to participate, as long as he comes to the business in the early morning of the day after tomorrow, then I will take the Daoist to the past. Qing Shi Confucian looked at Wei Suo. I don't know what do Taoists call. Just call me Li Li. Wei Suo casually said a pseudonym. If nothing unexpected, I will come to the king's shopkeeper the morning after tomorrow. Okay, then I'll be waiting for Li Daiyu to drive in the business firm. The Confucian scholar Qing Wei smiled and sent Wei Suo out of the door of the Wang family business. Waiting for the sharp-faced monk outside the Wangjia business firm to see that Wei Suo was actually delivered by the shopkeeper of the Wangjia business firm. After his eyes bulged, as he headed towards Wei Suo, the expression on his face was more respectful. 2. After Wei Suo left the Wangjia business firm, he did not return to the house he rented in the seafaring city. Instead, he visited a few shops under the guidance of a sharp-faced monk and bought a lot of things. The sharp-faced monk was given 5 inferior spirit stones, and then returned to his rented residence alone. How about it? As soon as he walked into the dwelling shrouded in red glories, Wei Suo saw that Jia was busy in front of the Ling Tian. Only a 30-foot square piece of Ling Tian had been planted with many elixir plants. Seeing Wei Suo coming back, Jia immediately greeted with full of concern. After seeing a few words in a soft conversation, they both entered the 3-story dwelling behind the tower. The night was sinking, and the entire Haixian city slowly fell into the night. I depend. What are you doing, Wei Suo? And you want to scare me? When the old man in green robe emerged from the ghost tank, he saw that Wei Suo wasn't cultivating. He looked dignified and looked at the ghost tank immobily. And myself. And he just called it, and looked around, only to see that he was in a quiet room for cultivation, and suddenly the expression on his face changed dramatically, and he shouted in disbelief, "Why so? This is where could it be filled with aura? This is the Haixian city of the Yunling continent." Wei Suo, okay, I replied, and Jia entered the quiet room. Yunling mainland, how could it be that we had no spirit veins at that time? How could there be a spirit vein in this small town of Yunling mainland? The old man in green robe continued to scream like a wind. This spirit vein was discovered by the originator of the city's Kaishan later, and you shouldn't be too surprised. This spirit vein can't be compared with the spirit vein in ancient legends. The spirit in the city is said to disappear in a few years. Wei Suo looked at the old man in green robe and said, "It will disappear as long as a few years? Then this is not a spiritual vein. The real spiritual vein can continue to cultivate the heaven and earth aura. This is at most a damaged spiritual vein sealed for a period of time," he said suspiciously, "but if this is the case, this part of the spiritual vein has already leaked light. How can it wait until today? That's because the people of Haixianzong added a seal magic circle to this spiritual vein, and slowly used it. Now it's just that the magic circle is too long and damaged, so there will be spiritual energy leaking out." No wonder, the old man in green robe nodded, but he couldn't help but ask, "Then the Haixian sect, who can't control the leakage of the aura, let people absorb the aura to practice at will? You don't have to worry about Haixianzong. Every day you stay in Haixian city, you have to pay a day's spirit stone fee." Wei Suo looked at the old man in green robe and said, "Jia and I've tried it, this aura is very thinly dispersed, and the total amount of aura absorbed is only close to one inferior spirit stone at most for 1 day of cultivation. It is absolutely impossible to exceed the aura of an inferior spirit stone. The level of such aura is already amazing." The old man in the green robe took a deep breath. It must have been used to restrain the aura. Otherwise, the aura will be lost. Where can such aura concentration be achieved? I remember you mentioned it to me before. At that time, although all the spirit veins were destroyed, some spirit veins were destroyed, but there were still some spirits scattered, or some places, there were spirits diffused. Wei Suo looked at the old man in green robe. "You said that there were monks at that time. You can arrange a formation called the Lingling formation to draw a thin aura to yourself for the monks to absorb." It's more than that. There was a cold heart on the face of the old man in the green robe. There were some sects at that time, who could also refine a magic bottle called the clean bottle, which can be placed specifically in that thin aura. But there are some places where there is some aura, which can automatically absorb the thin world aura and store it in the bottle. But in this place, one aura is lost and a monk collects. At 20,000 years ago, this place was almost it's gone. I don't think there is such a place. Wei Suo was about to say something, but the old man in green robe gave a cold look, snorted, and immediately interrupted, "Looking at you, I know you want to ask me if you know this method of arranging the Lingling array. I want to steal the spirit here for my own cultivation." "Old man, you really know me too, how can you do it?" Seeing the old man in green robe, Wei Suo's eyes suddenly lighted up, because he also knew the old man in green robe too well. The old man in green robe with some certainty, when you know something that is very helpful to Wei Suo's cultivation, you will have a very serious and very cold expression. "I do know a method of arranging the Lingling array." The old man in green robe glanced at Wei Suo. "It's just that this Lingling array needs a lot of materials to arrange. As long as you can find the materials, I can help you out." "What materials do you want?" Wei Suo was excited when he heard the old man in green robe. "3-color jade, true magnetic gemstone, Tianling chalcedony, Chaiwan jade, Tianhuan chalcedony, Tianlan orange crystal." The old man in green robe said expressionlessly. "Tianlan orange crystal, Jia, who was originally full of hope, frowned, other materials may be prepared. This day, the orange crystal is really hard to find. And it will be painful when I find it. Because this day Lanjing is to be fused with real magnetic gemstones. After the arrangement of the Lingling array, it can't be used for other refiners. The old man in green robe looked at it. Weso glanced. Tianlan orange crystal, what is this? Wei Suo interjected. You are too ignorant. The old man in green robe rolled his eyes, and he seemed too lazy to talk to Wei Suo. This is an extremely rare spar. When it is used in refining, it is used in certain carcasses and carcasses. It can be used to enhance the power of the magic weapon. For example, a magic weapon, the original material is refined, at most only the power of the spirit grade inferior, but if this kind of spar is added, it is likely to be upgraded to the power of the spirit grade Jia. Immediately and carefully introduced to Wei Suo, because this kind of crystal is said to be absent in the monastic world, it is from the sky outside the sky, and the crystal itself is orange. The appearance is it has an orange peel-like bump pattern, so it gets its name. After a pause, Jia said with some helplessness, this kind of spar is also something that the top sect gates may not have inventory. Nanas. Wei Suo's brow furrowed suddenly. Something that may not be available in this top-level sect is entirely the same as the purple fox flower, but it is impossible to find. Even if it is deliberately searched for, it may not be found even after spending many years. It seems that it is not difficult to arrange a gathering array. If it's me, if there is such a place, it's hard to find it. You must find it. The old man in green robe glanced at Wei Suo. After all, this aura is the same as the aura in the spirit stone, but it absorbs trouble and cultivates. It does not take much time to melt it. The spirit in the spirit stone must be melted and absorbed slowly. There is no way to increase the refining speed. If it can be formed into this gathering, it will not only be you, but also with Jia. It may not be necessary to break through 2 or 3 times in a few days. Path to Heaven. Author, Wu Ziwei. Chapter 267. Old man, is this horrifying array so terrifying? Hearing the old man in green robe, Wei Suo suddenly took a breath. He felt it carefully in the afternoon. As long as the spirit of this spirit vein can be absorbed into the body, it does not take much time to refining it, but this aura is too thin, and it can only be done by vomiting and other methods during cultivation. Absorbing auras, he can't absorb a lot of auras in a day, so he wondered if the old man in green robe could arrange a gathering aura. But in his imagination, the aura attracted by the aura was at most several times, 10 times higher than the concentration of the aura around it, but at the moment listening to the old man in green robe, this aura could be a few days' time will allow their cultivation to improve by 2 or 3 times. Isn't that gathering auras as terrifying as a giant whale sucking water? Isn't the concentration of auras gathered tens of thousands of times, hundreds of thousands of times higher than the concentration of auras around us? Or do you think, the old man in green robe looked at Wei Suo with contempt, and replied angrily, you think the aura in the sea fairy city is very thin, but in our time, even if it can be found in a place with some aura, the concentration of aura is also many times thinner than here. If the aura array does not have enough power, how much aura can be obtained? At such aura level, the effect of the aura array, of course it will be very scary. After a pause, the old man in green robe went on to say, the power of a large gathering of spirits, but within a few days, it can collect the scattered aura within thousands of miles. Even if it is the gathering I know array, as long as you can get a piece of Tianlan orange crystal of the size of a pigeon egg, if you can arrange a small gathering spirit array, with the concentration of this aura like Haixian city, it will attract the equivalent of tens of thousands of inferior spirit stones a day. There is no problem. Wei Suo also rarely quarreled with the old man in green robe. He groaned a little and asked, will this gathering of spirits gather such aura, will it be noticed? It may be extremely small. The old man in green robe glanced at Wei Suo and shook his head. In this case, it's as if you are standing at a very high altitude, and the surrounding world is full of rain silk. Where is the rain silk floating? Specific, it's hard to know where it fell, not to mention that this thin aura is thinner than you see. I don't know how many thousand times, how many times 10,000 times. Unless it is a monk who has a very fine grasp of the breadth of heaven and earth, otherwise, even a Jindan monk, you should not notice it. Weiss nodded. Since Zhu Lingzhen has such an amazing effect, it is basically impossible to be discovered. Although the materials such as Lan Lan crystal are difficult to find on this day, we still have to try our best to find out if we can find it. Have you been to Fangxi here? The old man in green robe didn't say much about the gathering, and asked Wei Suo while he looked at it. Since the addition of a Jiya, the old man of green robe and Jiya can be said to be a combination of programs designed specifically to help Wei Suo design and practice programs, and the fastest way to improve his strength. Now, as long as Wei Suo does according to the plan of the two, he can basically achieve the fastest training for advanced speed and strength improvement speed. The old man of Bao and Jiya also have a very clear plan, that is, to take a good rest in Haixian City and try to treat Han Wei while digesting all the things on hand that can enhance Wei Suo's strength. There is no need to talk about the importance of the consciousness impact technique. With Wei Suo's cultivation practice and the strength of the consciousness now in the split period, it is enough to be able to use the method of condensing the consciousness to refine some high-level instruments. Next, try some magic instruments. After accumulating some experience, you should be able to refine flying swords, and high-level materials such as Black Bat Magic Dragon into high-level magic instruments. Whether it's refining one or two magic weapons with a mid-level or higher spirit level, or refining a powerful flying sword, if you find a sword skill to cooperate with, you can definitely increase the power of the enemy. At the same time, Wei Suo also has two kinds of things, Black Water Lotus and Heartworm, which can be made even more powerful, which is of great benefit to Wei Suo. In addition, there is a Black Bat Dragon. Dragon Demon can boil out the liquid, which can also improve the defense level of the magic weapon on hand, and then boil out the 6th level of demon in the liquid. Can also be used to refine immortality. According to the magical power of the phantom monster, after making the elixir into an elixir, the elixir made by the 6th level intermediate elixir has an aura of hundreds of times that of the golden elixir. Now that the detailed plan has been worked out, the old man in the green robe asked, as if to supervise whether Wei Suo had implemented it. I've been there. It can be said that here is the Yunling continent and the transit point of this Dead Sea. A lot of production from the sea passes through the city. Coupled with the relationship of Reiki, many monks who don't lack spirit stones, they are all practicing in the city, so don't look at the small size of the city, but the population of the city is probably 3 or 4 times larger than that of Lingyu City. The transaction volume and some storage in Fang City are also more than ordinary. The city is several times larger. The average repair performance of the monk is much higher than other cities. Wei Suo nodded and said in detail, I have prepared a lot of materials for refining Bulet in Tiandan. This afternoon Jiya has already begun to refine it, and refine some materials of that Black Bat Demon Pill and other refiners, including water exquisite and other things that can enhance the power of the Black Water Lotus. I also bought some today. It is only used to cure Han Wei, the two most important medicines, Huanyang flower and Yangzi bird Yadan. Only bought one Huanyang flower. In addition, there is no to be used for cultivating Fijian. I haven't bought it yet. I've commissioned the largest Fangxi to buy it. Recently, Haixian City has no large-scale auctions. The most recent large-scale auction was in Yunmen City, which is closer to Haixian City. Months later. But the boss of the Wangjia business firm that I go to today will take me to an undisclosed split-term monk trade fair the day after tomorrow. It is said that there will be many things that are hard to see on the market. I don't know when it will be. Can you get something useful? Fun Nianjing monk exchange meeting? Is there such a rally now? The old man in green robe suddenly gleamed with gold. There are many good things in this kind of rally, so I must take me to shopping and enjoy it. Wei Suo looked at another shopaholic in the old man in the green robe, and he couldn't help but roll his eyes. That's in the day after tomorrow. You are not a weapon, and you are most afraid of the true fire of the sun. You will lose your vitality and cannot come out. What? Last time, you helped me refine the purple demon baby's energy, enough to withstand the loss of more than a dozen during the day. At most, it should be less refining, and lose one day's energy. Gritted his teeth. You are the standard, you have to shop to kill. Facing the old man in green robe, Wei Suo was speechless. After Wei Suo talked with the old man of green robe and Ji Ya for another moment, Ji Ya turned around and walked out of the quiet room, and walked to the room with the sky fire furnace on the top floor, but Wei Suo was first taken out of the Nabeo. Black water lily. Immediately, he took out 2 white jade boxes. I saw that after opening one of the white jade boxes, he took out a plant that shone with ice and blue light all over the body. This plant had a thin bare stem and several thin leaves on its head. The appearance looks like a small lantern, very strange. Weiss also looked at this peculiar plant for a moment, and then sat down and stretched out his hand. A purple real element wrapped the plant in it and kept penetrating and rubbing. In just a few breathing hours, this plant turned into a cloud of ice blue liquid. But then, it seems that this group of ice blue spirits is difficult to be refined into the aura by the true element. Under Wei Suo's constant application, dozens of auras flowed out from time to time, immediately wrapped in Wei Suo Zhenyuan and hit the black water lily on the side. A touch of ice blue aura touched the surface of the black water lily and was absorbed by the black water lily. It took more than half an hour for this mass of ice blue spirits to turn into ice blue spirits, which were all absorbed into the black water lotus. One plant after another, and then for 7 or 8 hours, Wei Suo has been doing the same thing, altogether refining 10 such ice blue plants. Then he opened another jade box. The jade box contains 6 plants with only 2 leaves, black plants and shiny plants. In the same way, these 6 black water plants, which took a little longer time to refine, were also refined by him into auras, which were all absorbed into the black water lotus. Call. Wei Suo, who had completed all of this, took a breath, and then poured true Yuan into the black water lotus, inspiring this peculiar defensive weapon, which is actually a plant. On the surface, it seems that there is no change in the black water lotus, but he spent more than 10 hours before refining the 10 old plants of the green robe that can certainly nourish the black water lotus. Shui Linglong and 6 black water weeds, anyway, were also smashed by 6,000 spirit stones. The defense power of this black water lily must be improved. After a few more hours, you can go directly to the monk exchange meeting of the 9th period. Nana, this monk practice, don't consume a lot of time. I hope this monk exchange period will not disappoint me. Put away the black water lotus, and after whispering this sentence, Wei Suo put the ghost tank in his arms, and then walked out of the quiet room, and walked towards the sky fire stove room on the uppermost floor of the residence. For several hours, after the day turned on, Wei Suo came out holding a black bottle. I saw that when Wei Suo came out, he was still shaking the black Dan bottle in his hand vigorously, and he kept shaking the scent of the incense stick for a long time, before he put this Dan bottle in Nabeo's bag. Out of this residence, walked towards the direction of Wangjia business. Asterisk. Huo, thanks to my classmates who calculate the spirit stone. Path to Heaven. Author, Wu Ziyi. Chapter 268. When Wei Suo walked to the front door of the Wangjia business firm, the young black clerk who had seen him seemed to have waited for a long time. As soon as he saw him, he immediately greeted him and said to Wei Suo, after a while then he immediately turned around and ran into the Wangjia business firm. After a while, the shopkeeper Wang, still dressed as a Confucian scholar, walked out with a smile. After saying hello to Wei Suo, there was no nonsense, saying, "Li Daiyu, come with me." Lao Wang, the shopkeeper, led the way. Wei Suo smiled indifferently, and nodded. The shopkeeper Wang walked slowly and chatted with Wei Suo. The place of the monks' exchange meeting in this period was not far from the Wangjia business office. After walking a few streets to the outer city of Haixian City, the shopkeeper Wang led Weizhuo into a shop that looks very ordinary. This shop seems to be specializing in the purchase of some refining materials, and in the hall stands a dry shop assistant with a yellow leather hat. This clerk had only 4 levels of cultivation in Zhenhaijing. When he saw that the shopkeeper Wang came in with Wei Suo, he didn't say anything. He just nodded at the shopkeeper Wang and said hello. The shopkeeper Wang took Wei Suo to the inside, and after passing through a backyard, he took Wei Suo to a bungalow that looked like a warehouse. The tempers of some monks are still weird. If it is not necessary, it is better to talk less, so as not to cause unnecessary trouble. When he stopped in front of this bungalow, the shopkeeper turned his head especially against Wei Suo. Confessed a sentence. "Thank you for the reminder of the shopkeeper Wang." Wei Suo nodded. He naturally understood this very well. The general monks of Zhou Tianjing have already been regarded as extraordinary in the surrounding cities of the Lingyu city. There is no monk in the period of a monk like the Golden Eagle Palace. Generally, monks in Zhuxianjing have some means in their hands, and they have become very proud. The monks who divide the mind are all the first-class figures of the elder Daizong men. To tell the truth, the monks who split the period of time we saw before Weizhuo did not come to the Yunling mainland. Which one is not a dangerous and arrogant lord? Level characters. Seeing Wei Suo's temper is very humble, Wang shopkeeper smiled with satisfaction, stretched his hand and pushed open the door of the seemingly ordinary bungalow. As soon as the door was pushed open, the scene inside was unobstructed. I saw that most of the sights inside were covered by a crimson mask, and outside the crimson mask, there was a dwarf wearing a yellow robe. This gnome is only about half the height of Wei Suo, but it looks like he is more than 50 years old. His expression is relatively cold, and it is not a good thing at first sight. What makes Wei Suo's eyes awkward is that the specific cultivation of this dwarf is that he can't see through the breathing technique. From the breadth of his body, it should be a powerful monk with 4 layers of thinking. It turned out to be Wang Daiyu. After seeing the head of the shop with Wei Suo, the gnome greeted him, then he looked at Wei Suo expressionlessly, and then asked directly, "This Tao Yu, did Wang Daiyu want to refer to this exchange meeting?" "This is Li Daiyu. He has a lot of hard to find things out there that he wants to trade. It is here that he brought the referrals to participate in this exchange meeting." The king's shopkeeper with a very unusual identity in Haixian City seems to have nothing to do with this dwarf, not dare to neglect. He nodded and replied immediately. "Since it was introduced by Wang Daiyu, it should not disappoint us. It's just the procedure to go." "If you want to go," the dwarf wearing a yellow robe still said with no smile on his face. Because I had heard Wang's treasurer say on the way to it, Wei Suo did not hesitate. He took out a bag of spirit stones silently and handed it to the dwarf monk, who seemed difficult to understand. "Okay, there's no problem. The 2 can go in." After the consciousness swept away, the dwarf monk returned the spirit stone bag to Weizhuo. "Let's go." Wang Ziwian smiled at Wei Suo Xuanhuan when he heard the dwarf say this. He saw Wei Suo looking a little suspicious, looking at the red mask in front of him. He explained softly, "This is just the beginning. There is no problem with soundproofing and the prohibition of the consciousness type that prevents monks who are not able to enter the split period, and passes the consciousness of the monk who splits the period." Wei Suo nodded, not much to say, and then walked into the red mask of the king's treasurer. Only a slight sense of reaction became a bit dull, and Wei Suo easily passed through the crimson mask with a thickness of more than a foot. In the crimson mask, there are more than 50 ordinary mahogany chairs, scattered irregularly, and more than 30 monks have been seated in it. I saw the shopkeeper Wang and Weizhuo coming in. These people, his eyes fell on both of them. Most of the monks present saw Wei Suo's only Zhou Tianjing's cultivation, and some despised and disdainful gods appeared in his eyes. But when we saw Wei Suo passing through the crimson mask, as if nothing had happened, these people's eyes flashed with surprise, and the contempt was greatly reduced. The changes of the gods in the eyes of these monks fell in Wei Suo's eyes. He almost immediately reacted to what was going on, because at a glance, of the more than 30 monks present, except for the 5 or 6 monks with 1 and 2 halves, the rest were all in the split time period. The triplet is a monk above. And the king's shopkeeper with 3 layers of thoughts beside him seemed to be struggling when walking through the red mask, and his body was a little shaken. It seems that the general monk who divided the concept of thinking wants to pass this red mask. So easy. In Wei Suo's imagination, most of these exchanges of monks in divided thoughts were mostly divided into 2 or more monks, but now most of them are monks with more than 3 divided thoughts. So many it is really amazing that the monks who cultivated to reach such a state would gather together. Seeing that Wei Suo didn't seem to be affected by the crimson mask at all, the head of the king's shopkeeper froze, but in his eyes flashed an imperceptible of surprise. For this exchange meeting, he already had regular customers, and now there is a square-faced middle-aged monk wearing a green robe, greeting him, "Wang Daiyu, don't come unharmed. This Daiyu very face-to-face, are you a monk of the royal family?" This man's green robe has a square-face middle-aged monk with the Ri moon rune pattern. He is also a monk with a triple mindset, and this person is only about 40 years old at most. If you put it on the Tianqian continent, it will definitely be a first-class figure of the elders of the Dazongmen who are far more powerful than the Tianyumen and Danjiao resorts. "Huang Daiyu, your cultivation base has entered again." A glint of light flashed in the eyes of Wang's shopkeeper, and then he smiled and looked at Wei Suo with a smile. "This is Li Daiyu, and I have some friendship, so I recommended him to this exchange meeting. Our Wang family does not have such an outstanding young talent." It turned out to be Li Daiyu. The green-robed square-faced monk clenched fists at Wei Suo and said bluntly, "Li Daiyu used Yirongdan to change his appearance. Look at Li Daiyu's true age. It should definitely not exceed 30. It's really shameful for us to have such a practice at this age." Senior Huang is polite. Wei Suo knew that it was certainly impossible for him to completely cover up with Yirongdan and Yiqidan by means of the monk who divided the period. So when I heard the monk of the square face, there was no change in his face. He said modestly, "The junior is the first time to participate in this kind of exchange meeting, and I also asked the seniors to bring more. Wang Daiyu, the Li Daiyu you brought too gave me a face." Hearing Wei Suo's tone so humble, the square-face monk smiled. "Haha, why don't Wang Daiyu and Li Daiyu sit on my side? Everyone is so close, get close." The shopkeeper turned his head and looked at Wei Suo. He saw that Wei Suo didn't mean to refuse at all. He nodded with a smile, and took Wei Suo to sit in the empty space beside the monk with this square face. The 2 talents had just settled down and hadn't said much to the monk with a square face. The black figure flashed in the red light, but they walked into a black robe. The black robe on this black robe has no patterns. It seems to be made of silk, shiny. The face is only about 40 years old. The facial features are very common, but the face is very pale. The yin cold breath on the body is compelling. As soon as this person walked in, there were many monks who were talking to each other in threes and threes. They were all slightly stagnate. The temperature in the entire red mask seemed to have dropped a few degrees. This old monster actually came this time. The square-face monk's face, which was originally intended to talk to Wei Suo and Wang's shopkeeper, also changed slightly, and said softly. I saw the monk whose face was unusually pale and gave a very lonely feeling of coldness. After entering, after coldly glancing at the monk present, he found a seat alone and sat down without talking to anyone. Is this predecessor? Wei Suo looked at the man and turned his head to ask Fang-face monk softly. This black-robe monk gives a very strange and arrogant feeling. Obviously, his breath is very amazing. This person is one of the elders of the Yin Corps, and his complex name is Zudge. I don't know the specific name. Most people call him Zudge Lao Ei. Fang Face Monk pressed his voice very low. It was made from the body of a monk. The most powerful piece of art was called Sumayaguwa, a magic weapon made from the teeth of unknown monks. Generally, when a monk thinks of this person dealing with a corpse all day long, they carry things made from corpses, and they are naturally a little uncomfortable. And Yin corpses are powerful, nothing is wrong, don't offend this person. Is the elder of the Yin corpse. Wei Suo was slightly surprised when he heard the words of Fang Face Monk. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Path to Heaven. Author, Wu Ziyi. Chapter 269. I don't know if this old monster is going to trade something this time. After saying a few words to Wei Suo, Fang Face Monk was looking forward to the old Zudge old monster with a pale face. After all, as the old Zudge stranger, if it comes to sell or exchange something, the level of that thing is definitely not low. After a while, in the red mask, a monk wearing a silver scale-like vest walked in. The monk's facial features are very beautiful, more than 30 years old, but his hands are somewhat deformed, uneven in length, and his face is very soft. Upon seeing this person, the face of the monk and the shopkeeper of the king immediately changed their faces, and the shopkeeper of the king also reminded Wei Suo softly, this person is a silver carp, and I don't know where in the sea I built the cave house. Free training, divided into 4 levels of cultivation. The hands are a bit handicapped, and most hate others to stare at his hands. You must pay attention. It seems that this person's psychology is also somewhat deformed. Of course, Wei Suo didn't want to cause trouble. After nodding quietly, he no longer looked at this person. After waiting for about half an hour, after another 5 or 6 monks came one after another, I saw the dwarf wearing a yellow robe with a smile on his face, and also walked into the red mask. It should be the beginning. Wei Suo just moved in his heart. Sure enough, he only listened to the expressionless expression of the yellow-gowned dwarf. There was no nonsense at all. The time has come, and this exchange meeting will start now. Wei Suo looked away, and saw that there were about 40 monks present, and more than 10 chairs were empty. At this time, they stopped talking and listened to the yellow-robed dwarf. Let's go from left to right. The yellow-robed dwarf glanced at the far left, and said, Gao Daiu, what treasure do you want to trade this time? On the far left, the yellow-gowned dwarf called Gandaiu, is a thin and thin daoist wearing a navy blue robe and a black crown on his head. When he nodded his head and took it from his arms. Take out a piece of green light flashing. Magic fragment. At a glance, Wei Suo saw that the thin and thin Taoist's hand was a piece of Jing gold, but it was covered with simple runes, and the brilliance flashed, and the aura was very amazing. Sure enough, only listen to this trivial Taoist who said, this object is an unknown fragment of ancient treasure. After excitation, it can emit a beam of green light, which can reach the power of the spiritual magic of the highest order. The number of excitations there is no limit. It only takes a long time to excite, and it takes 5 breaths. One time, the real element consumed is about 1/10 of what I am now cultivated. The next thing is to use this thing for a spirit level. The defensive magic weapon of Zongpan. Li Daiu, I forgot to remind you one thing before going down. Hearing this person's words, the king's shopkeeper sitting next to Wei Suo suddenly remembered something like this, and pressed his voice extremely low, and said to Wei Suo, we don't want to exchange in this kind of exchange, and it doesn't matter if the exchange is successful, but we can't bargain. If there are several parties looking at one thing at the same time and bidding against each other, Wei Suo asked quietly, To be honest, this first thing is a piece of magic weapon with the power to reach the top grade of the spirit order, which really shocked him. Although the excitation time is a bit long, it is extremely useful for the monks who have powerful defensive weapons on hand and are not afraid of the other party's bombardment. Give something that is above the other party's conditions, and see that someone is fighting for something, and then add something to it, and finally it depends on the monk's choice of the shipment, which is okay, Wang shopkeeper replied. Under this wind and fire futon, I don't know if I can agree with the interests of my fellow friends at this moment. A bald, chunky purple monk who looked very kind, took out a green and red futon and threw it directly to Let's Do It. Dragon Daiyu, this is a real defensive magic weapon of the middle ranks of the wind and fire. Of course, I am satisfied when I saw the futon thrown over by this bald and chunky monk. The name of the dry and thin Taoist suddenly seemed to me. It is the of surprise. There are other Daiyu who like this piece of magic weapon of the main Daiyu. Do you want to exchange it with other defensive magic weapons? The yellow-robed dwarf asked, expressionless. Wei Suo was greedy with a glance at the fragment of the magic weapon, but he also had the two yellow hill-like magic weapon and black water lotus on his hand that could meet the requirements, and the yellow hill itself killed the chaotic monk. If you get it, you can't show up on this occasion. Therefore, although the greedy spirit level high-level attack power, it is just helpless swallowing. Good stuff. All good stuff, the old man's voice suddenly rang in his ears, and even rolled his eyes. It seems that this shopaholic old man is really desperate to shop. The monks present were also silent. After the yellow-robed dwarf nodded at the dry and thin Taoist, the dry and thin Taoist could not conceal the excitement and put away the wind and fire futon, and then the magic flashing green light on his hand, the fragment was thrown to the bald monk. After seeing it for a moment, the bald monk put it away with satisfaction. There is also a piece of black brass underneath, which is an excellent material for refining the Thunder System magic weapon. It can be sold at a price of 30,000 inferior spirit stones. Priority. The dry and thin Taoist stretched out his hand and took out a brocade bag, which contained a fist size, which looked similar to the gown of the gnomes, and the yellow gold of the earth. You can make 30,000 pieces of spirit stones underneath. The words of the dry-seeing dry thin monk had just dropped, and a 50-year-old man with a hair-raising repair immediately said, "You can exchange it with a Xiangji." Underneath, a middle-aged monk wearing 2 gold rings and a crimson leather jacket groaned for a moment before speaking. Seeing that there were no other people speaking out, the yellow-robed dwarf glanced at the dry and thin Taoist, and the dry and thin Taoist, without any hesitation, threw the black brass in his hand towards the middle-aged monk in a red leather coat. After exchanging a lucid Ganoderma plant that he took out of Zygen, he said to the yellow gnomes, "There is no longer anything to sell or buy for now." Ma Daiyu. The yellow-robed dwarf nodded toward a monk beside the dry and thin Taoist. The monk's appearance is also very peculiar. Obviously the body is the same as Chingren, but with a baby face, wearing a conspicuous saffron robe. In the next time, I want to ask for the purchase of a water monster of level 5 or above, or a live egg that has not been hatched. This monk's true bone age is obviously not low, and it is a monk who divides the mind into 3. But speaking, it is also a childish accent. There is a living egg of the 5th level mid-level deep water spider on the lower hand. A young black monk who looked more like a yin dove said coldly, "But I want to use this living egg in exchange for a stone." 2 yin stone, the baby-faced monk said helplessly. Do Taoists have any other treasures they want to exchange? But at this moment, the yin was angry, his face pale and abnormal, and the elder yin of the dead body shook his hand without saying a word, and threw a blue crystal the young monk in black, and the young monk in black did not dare to neglect, directly took out a fist-sized white worm egg, and threw it to the elder Zudge, old monster of yin corpse elder. The baby-faced monks did not dare to reveal any unpleasant gods. When they saw no monks around, they nodded toward the yellow-robed dwarf. The on the face of the yellow-robed dwarf did not change at all, and he nodded toward the middle-aged woman with golden hairpins on her head, wearing white clothes and gold magic weapon. "Du Daiyu, it's your turn now. There is a piece of golden lotus root underneath, and I want to exchange for a piece of 5 sages." The middle-aged woman smiled slightly, took a golden stalk in her hand, and glanced at the monk around her with full of hope. 7 Algae, there is a piece in the lower hand. The first dry old man who exchanged treasures, but his eyes lighted up, and immediately took out a mass of colorful flashes of light, which looked a little soft. The object was thrown to the middle-aged beautiful woman. Seeing this group of things, Wei Suo was obviously startled. Just when the light of surprise flashed in the eyes of the middle-aged beautiful woman and was just about to exchange, it was always very low-key, and Wei Suo, who didn't even pay much attention to the monks around, suddenly moved and took out a ball from the Nabeo. It also gleamed with colorful brilliance, but it was soft soil-like things that were more than 3 times larger than that of the old man. Seeing this thing taken out by Wei Suo, the middle-aged woman suddenly felt a bit of golden light. Du Dao also has this thing in the next hand. Just to be honest, I don't know the function of this thing yet. I don't know if Du Dao can talk about the function of this thing below. If this thing is not useful for the next, you can use the 7 algae that are twice as large as yours in exchange for your golden lotus roots. Wei Suo said, neither humble nor humble. This piece of soft mud was inadvertently collected on his way to Turtle Shell Island, but he felt that the color was extraordinary, but the old man in green robe and Jia didn't understand the function. Oh, the middle-aged beautiful woman glanced at Wei Suo and said, this can naturally be said to Dao Yu. When these 7 algae are refined, they can be melted together when they are refining Jing gold instruments. The Jing gold material has become more compact and tough. And it is effective for almost all Jing gold, and it will not affect any magic circle. It can be said that it is a universal auxiliary material to improve the quality of the Jing gold magic carcass. Good, I saw that all the monks saw. Wei Suo apparently hesitated for a moment, and saw that his eyes had been fixed on the root of the golden water lotus, but after hesitating for a while, all the monks saw him and made up their minds. He nodded in general, reached for a hand, and took off the 7 algae in his hand, which was about twice the size of the dry old man, and threw it to the middle-aged beautiful woman. Seeing that there were no more monks around, the middle-aged and beautiful woman could not wait for it, and threw a golden rhizome in hand. Path to Heaven. Author, Wu Zy. Chapter 270. Wei Suo took a half-foot-long golden water lotus root and looked at it a little. Then he collected this heavy, singular rhizome like pure gold and the remaining 7 color algae into Nabeo. The 7 color algae have such a function. Boy, I didn't think you accidentally touched such a good thing. Huh, your kid is really very affectionate. I just mentioned that this golden water lotus root can improve the medicine of Xuanhuan and Yangtze bird demon. It is useful for Han Wei, so you use so many 7 colors change the algae. If you can't buy Yangtze bird demon pill, aren't you losing money? At this moment, the old man in green robe scorned in Wei Zhuo's ear. When Wei Zhuo didn't hear it, he continued to lower his head, and then quietly lowered his tone again. I have a prefecture level high level ice shield spell, plus this top level fire cloud brave magic weapon, to buy a purple fox flower. But the next sentence of the middle-aged beautiful woman named Du gave Wei Suo's heart a sudden shock. The ice shield spells are originally the most popular among the various shield spells, because the ice aura naturally has the effect of slowing the opponent's magic weapon. There are not many real spirit level high level magic weapons in a large gate, and Wei Suo does not have a real spirit level high level magic weapon on hand. This price made Wei Suo extremely emotional. However, after secretly taking a deep breath, Wei Suo still persuaded him to give up the idea of exchange. After all, the purple fox flower is also very rare for him. In the future, he must rely on this elixir to impact Jindan realm. Now the female surnamed Du is obviously already in the fourfold practice of dividing the mind, and it must be preparing for the future impact on the Jindan realm. The middle-aged woman Du surnamed swept around and saw that there was no voice from the monks around. He sighed slightly and nodded at the yellow-gowned dwarf. The yellow-robed gnome no longer looked at her, and nodded directly at the white-faced monk wearing a dark red robe sitting next to her. The golden snake deist, it's your turn now. Below is to ask for the purchase of a Xianxian. Shenxian immortal pill. Did this guy get heavenly order exercises? A shocked look clearly appeared in the eyes of the monks present. The square-faced monk beside Wei Suo couldn't help but whispered to the king's shopkeeper. Such a sentence. Senior Huang, may I ask this Xianxian pill, what exactly is it? In the afterglow of Wei Suo's eyes, he saw that even the elder with the dead face of the corpse sect shone violently. This is the best medicine for dispersing power. Fang-face monk turned his eyes and looked at Wei Suo, whispered, when dissipating power, all the real elements in the body can be turned into aura. When recultivating new exercises, the original cultivation practice will not give up all the power. This Jinshi Sanren should cultivate the higher level spells of the ground level. To find such a medicine, you should get a higher level celestial power. It's just this immortal level panacea, which is really rare. I'm afraid that the golden snake Lang Jun will still be disappointed and come back this time. The king's shopkeeper now sighed with a low wry smile and said with emotion, it's difficult again. Sure enough, no monk responded at the scene. The very soft-looking golden snake Lang Jun could only shake his head in disappointment, silently. A 7th level low-level golden phoenix demon pill, in exchange for a magic level attack magic weapon. 1-star essence, 1 in exchange for a magical class mask of the aura of the middle rank of the aura. In this split period monks exchange meeting, not only the things that appear or to be bought, but all of them are very amazing in value, and are very useful to most monks. Wei Suo is everything that everyone wants to die. But these monks who are amazing are basically no shortage of spirit stones. Most of them simply do not want to trade with spirit stones, only want to exchange for what they want. The things these monks proposed for exchange were also of extremely high value. Even if Wei Suo wanted it, he didn't have it on hand, and he couldn't eat it at all, making the old man in green robe always feel itchy and unbearable. In this type of trade fair, the speed of the transaction is not much faster than the auction, and many monks do not have any magic tools to sell, just request to buy something, or wait to see the monks present for trading. Is there anything you want to get? Yellow Daiyu, it's your turn. So it was only a moment's time. 15 or 6 monks passed by, and it was the fang-face monk beside Wei Suo. I want to buy a 6-level intermediate black bat monster dragon demon pill. Seeing his turn, the square-faced monk said aloud immediately. After saying this sentence, the square-faced monk, who seemed to be very brave in character, swept around with hope. Seeing that there was no monk responding, the face of the monk with this face suddenly felt depressed, but what he and Wang's shopkeeper didn't expect was that Wei Suo, who was sitting beside him, seemed a little embarrassed. There is a black bat dragon demon in the lower hand. Li Daiyu, you have a black bat dragon in your hand. Fang-face monk turned his head incredulously, as if an egg choked on the throat. There were many monks who had 3 levels of ideology and 3 levels of training above. When we looked at Wei Suo, there was a little less contempt in my heart. The mutated earth monster of the black bat dragon has an amazingly thick armor. The general triad monk of the split mind, even if it can withstand the enemy, is extremely difficult to kill if it is to be killed. Yes. Good. It's just that Danyi has been completely cooked by me. Dan liquid is better to boil. It's the main liquid that is needed now. Fang-face monk suddenly rejoiced. I don't know what Li Dai wants to exchange. There are a lot of things that I want to ask to buy and exchange. Wei Suo turned around and looked at the yellow robe gnome. I don't know if I can simply say everything I want at once. Anyway, it's his turn for you to come down, and you happen to have what he wants. Of course, seeing Wei Suo really had some good things, this name originally seemed to bring only part of the mind to the king's shopkeeper. The monk was also dissatisfied with the yellow robe gnome, and he was also very polite to Wei Suo. I want a flying sword tactics, a magic method of magic stones, a demon pill of Yangtze bird, an obscure magic crystal, and a Tianlan orange crystal. Wei Suo nodded. Said. As soon as Wei Suo's words came out, all the monks present, except for the king's shopkeeper, were all beating in their hearts. None of these things he said were amazing things, and looking at his look, it was obviously something that could be used for exchange, definitely more than the 6th level intermediate medicine. After listening to Wei Suo, the monk Fang Fei suddenly looked a bit ugly, because he had nothing on his hand that satisfied Wei Suo. What made Wei Suo very ugly at the same time was that he said these things, but the monk present did not respond. Obviously, even if the monk present had these things he wanted, he was of great use. I don't want to exchange it. Li Daiyu, are you interested in other things? The magic weapon, the elixir, and the flag can be exchanged underneath at this time. The monk Fang was somewhat anxious and could not help whispering to Wei Suo. A sentence. Hearing the words of Fang Face monk, Wei Suo, who was very disappointed in his heart, sighed and said, if there is a large scale enveloping a Mumu aura, you can exchange this thing. A large scale enveloping a Mumu aura circle? Do you want to arrange an amazing range of linked yen? Fang Face monk dumbfounded. Because in his concept, this kind of magic circle with no power against the enemy is of no use to ordinary monks. Naturally, there is no such set of magic circle flags and no such magic circle. The method of layout. There is such a complete set of flags for the formation of the phalanx at the bottom of the hand. This platoon is called the God of the Mountain God. It can cover the mountain head for more than 30 miles. And there is no need to master the phalanx, just focus on the true element, it's ready to be arranged at this moment. An old man with green robes and long beards looked at Fang Face monk and Wei Suo, and said, this set of flags can be exchanged under, but for this pill, I have no interest. If you use a defensive weapon with a mid-level or higher spirit level, you can use it for exchange underneath. Okay, Chen Daiyu. I will use the sun umbrella in exchange for your set of flags. What do you think? Fang Face monk heard it, and suddenly his eyes lit up, and he took out an umbrella-shaped magic weapon with his hand and threw it there. A long-bearded elder with a clear face. Naturally, it's a matter of friendship and friendship. The old man with green shirt and long beard smiled and directly took the sun umbrella thrown away by the monk of the square face, and then took out at least a set of hundreds of blue flags and threw them to Fang Face monk. This is the Black Bat Demon Dragon Demon Pill, this is the boiled liquid. If this liquid is not used immediately, you will have to shake the 2 jaw sticks every 3 hours. Otherwise, after solidifying, there is no way. Used Wei Suo didn't have any nonsense. He took out a demon pill that had turned into light black, and at the same time took out the black pill bottle that had been shaken for a long time, and handed it to the Fang Face monk. Thank you Daiyu Li. Fang Face monk suddenly overjoyed put a bunch of flags in Wei Suo's hands, and then couldn't wait to take the things in Wei Suo's hands. Looking at his look, right Wei Sokan accepted his proposal and exchanged the demon Dan and Danyi for the banner, and he was very grateful. So many high-level monks are present that are enough to wipe out a large gate. Are there none of the things I want? Seniors who have what I want on hand can also make other requests, and can also exchange the rest for the next. Below, I know that there is a Tianlan orange crystal in one's hands at this moment. A slightly icy cold voice came into Wei Suo's ear. Wei Suo looked down with fame, but his heart was cold. The vocalist was the silver carp who was wearing scale-like vests and his hands were of different lengths, and the most resentful people stared at his hands. I saw the silver carp person continued to look at Wei Suodeo, and that person is in Haixian City, absolutely safe. It's just that ordinary things can't enter this person's eyes at all. If you have any rare treasures on your body, there is a method of refining the flying sword. If you can trade with me, when the trade fair is over, I can take you to see the person and guarantee that you can exchange for a Tianlan orange crystal. Path to Heaven. Author, Wu Zy. Chapter 271. Change with him, see what he exchanges with. Upon hearing the Yinlai San people say, the old man in green robe suddenly said in Wei Soul ear, I know at least 20 or 30 ways to refine the flying sword, just pick the most crappy one for him. Rare treasure, Wei Suo knew that since the silver carp scattered people were looking at his hands, he had to try to deal with it. His mind was suddenly very narrow. This kind of person patting his farts would generally be useful. So he simply pretended to be flattered and said, "Senior Carp, the method of refining the flying sword, but the younger ones can be used for exchange, but you say rare treasures, do not know what grade of things it refers to." The Yinlai San people were extremely used by the predecessor Wei Suo, and his eyes were not so cold. The man's skills and techniques below the heaven level must be insignificant. Not good. I say that, at what level should this rare treasure go, should you be sure in your heart? The juniors first used the method of refining the flying sword known below, and made transactions with the seniors. After the fair is over, the juniors will let the seniors of Silver Carp see if I have enough qualifications to exchange Tianlan orange crystals. You see how. Wei Suo continued to bite a senior, yelling. Okay, Yinlai Sanren gave Wei Suo a glance. Since you call yourself a junior, I won't let you lose. Do you want a magic weapon or something? But you should also be very clear that you are making flying swords. The value of law. Wei Suo silently pondered for a moment. Although the silver carp man said that he would not let him suffer, the last sentence clearly implied a threat. Obviously, even if you want a magic weapon, the other party can't give anything above the spirit level. If it is not something above the middle rank of the spirit order, it is of little use to him. This guy must also make self-made flying swords, and good alchemy gold. He certainly can't take it out at this time. The old man in green robe who wanted to go shopping to the point of death said, "You must ask him, is there a high-level demon pill, or something that can enhance the power of the black water lotus?" Wei Suo suddenly moved in his heart, said quietly, "I am interested in high-level demon pill, or water dragon glue, weak water stem." Oh! Then this weak water stem the silver carp stunned slightly, and he took out a 3-foot length with little care, and his small fingers were thick and thin, and looked like a straight black from a distance. Iron-like things, but when you look closely, it is a strange plant with thin bristles all over the body and some wet skin on it, which looks extremely hard. Okay, the juniors will immediately give the predecessor the method of refining the flying sword. Wei Suo immediately collected this peculiar plant, took out a blank blue jade, and quickly scratched it with his nails. In just a moment, Wei Suo threw the jade slip to the Yinlai Sanren. After carefully watching it, the Yinlai Sanren nodded and stopped talking. Seeing that there was no one to make a deal with himself, Wei Suo nodded toward the yellow-robed dwarf. "Huang Daiyu, do you have anything else to sell, or what to buy?" The yellow-robed dwarf looked at Fangface frostlessly and asked. For the time being Fangface monk waved his hand quickly, still a happy expression. Judging from what he looks like, all the monks present can guess that there should be something extraordinary in his body, but his body is easy to damage. With the reinforcement of the black bat dragon's pill liquid, it is very safe to use. This guy is really, if I hadn't studied the blood-eating method knife long ago, I wouldn't be able to use this pill to strengthen it, otherwise I would get him in turn. The old man in green robe groaned in Wei Suo's ear. "Wang Daiyu, it's your turn." The yellow gown nodded at Wang's shopkeeper immediately. Below is to want a chart of the sea that has disappeared overseas, as long as it is a chart of the sea area that I don't have at hand. Underneath, you can exchange it with a defensive shield or attack magic weapon of the middle order of the spirit order. Wang the shopkeeper smiled slightly. Next, with the appearance of one monk after another, one by one, naturally there are treasures. Not only did the Nabo Dharma ring containing 20 times the amount of the ordinary low-level Nabao, but also the secret Dharma boat that could go deep into the deep sea 5,000 feet, and even appeared a half a daedon. But these monks can basically be described in one word, that is not bad spirit stone. All of these monks did not accept the purchase of spirit stones, and the things they offered to exchange were all strange. Some monks require unique spells and spar like Wei Suo. Some monks, as long as a material on some kind of high-level monster, even the most bizarre monk, the conditions proposed are actually certain in quantity, it has been sinking in the mud at the bottom of the sea for thousands of years. Despite these strange requirements, there are really many monks on the scene. The accumulation of monks with divided thoughts, especially those with more than 3 levels of categorized thoughts, is indeed unimaginable to even low-level monks. After trading with the Yinlai Sanren, Wei Suo remained quiet, sitting very low-key, and suddenly, an imperceptible light flashed in his eyes. It turned out that it was the last monk at this time, the elder of the corpse sex face, who was divided into 5 layers, the elder Zuj and the strange. I want a 10,000-year-old row, if there is one, I will use a spirit-grade defensive weapon to replace it. Zuch's strangely insulted voice sounded in this fair. Upon hearing this sentence from Zuch Lao Ei, although Wei Suo still remained quiet, he secretly gasped in the air. Wanyan Raozi has amazing nourishing qi and blood effects, and its value is also very amazing, but this Zuch old monster is a spiritual defensive magic weapon. It can be seen that there must be more powerful defensive laws on his body. Device. The strength of this corpse sect can be seen from this. After a moment of silence, a strange-looking big-head monk nodded, did not speak, shook his hand, and threw a baby-shaped, flesh-colored elixir to the Zuch old monster. The old stranger Zuch didn't even look at it, so he put it in his pocket, then shook his hand, and threw a white sensuous white bone ring to the big-head monk. Afterwards, the elder of the corpse sect said, "Yes, 1 egg of the carrion butterfly, 1 strain of konjac for corpse, or 1 prescription of Byangdan." Carrion butterfly eggs, Wei Suo's heart suddenly moved. This carrion butterfly, if Wei Suo remembered it correctly, can be used to practice the Dharma King color butterfly in the Xiangu Miu Shu he obtained from the messenger monk. The Dharma King butterfly in the magic art of immortal Gu is ranked 2 higher than the dragon kite, which is the 3rd immortal Gu. Why, please, trade with him. This person should be practicing what Yin Yuan tactics, resulting in burning his own essence, and continue to nourish the blood and essence medicine. Otherwise this person's my physique will become weaker and weaker, and my cultivation will become slower and slower. The voice of the old man in green robe sounded somewhat proudly. This kind of remedy, I don't know much anyway, just give him one just lame. At this time, there were no other monks answering the meeting, and Wei Suo did not hesitate. Once again, he took out a piece of blue jade and engraved the old man in green robe to his danfang. It was also the same as the big head monk in front. Without saying a word to Zuch old monster, Zuch's eyes squinted slightly, but he looked at Wei Suo for a moment, then glanced at it, then put away the jade, and took out an egg-sized insect egg and threw it to Wei Suo. Wei Suo's brow suddenly wrinkled. Because this gray-white worm egg with some black spots not only looks a bit slippery on the surface, but also exudes a strong smell throughout the body, it is really like a rotten corpse, which is extremely unpleasant. In this case, then this exchange meeting is here. The next exchange meeting is 3 months later. Wei Suo frowned and quickly put this unhealthy bug egg into the treasure bag. At that time, the sound of the yellow robe gnome without any nonsense sounded. After exchanging 2 things, the old Zuch monster didn't need anything, and nodded to the yellow robe. "Li Daiu, do you want me to walk with you later?" As soon as the voice of the yellow gnomes dropped, many monks present stood up and walked out. The shopkeeper Wang asked Wei Suo in a low voice. If accompanied by Wang's shopkeeper, it is naturally more secure. Wei Suo looked at Wang's shopkeeper and said, "It's just that I owe more to Wang's shopkeeper's favor. Li Daiu is kind, today Li Daiu's shot is extraordinary, but it also made my face shine." When the Wang shopkeeper smiled slightly, the square-face monk next to him arched his hand to Wei Suo. "Li Daiu, I got your things today, thank you first. Since there is Wang Daiu to accompany you, it should be foolproof in this seafaring city, and will leave in the next." Wei Suo also had some good feelings towards this person, and smiled slightly. "It is also an honor to be able to make Senior Huang, and there will be a period in the future." "Wang Daiu, this person was brought by you." Why, you are not worried about me, are you afraid that I am not good for him? After only 3 of him, Wei Suo and Wang Zhangbao, were left, he first said such a thing to Wang Zhenzi. Yinlai Dai's words were heavy. The shopkeeper Wang smiled indifferently and said, I'm just curious below, wanting to see what treasure is in my friend, and I also want to see what Tianlan orange crystal is like. That's it? I've only heard of Lanchange orange crystal on this day, but I haven't seen any real thing yet. The Yinlai Sanren snorted coldly, stood up, and looked at Wei Suo. There is something on you that can be taken out, otherwise I won't waste my time. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Path to Heaven. Author, Wu Zy. Chapter 272. This is. Wei Suo took out 2 things silently, but just saw the things he took out at a glance, and the shocked god appeared in the eyes of Wang's shopkeeper. Earth Fire Fairy Lotus, the face of the silver carp changed, and after a moment, his eyes were taken back from the 2 ruby petals in Wei Suo's hands, and he looked at Wei Suo with cold eyes. I can't think of it in your hands. There is such a thing. The younger generations of Fire Fairy Lotus should be enough for a monk to repair the fire roots. Wei Suomian looked at this guy who was a little uncomfortable when he looked at God alone. I don't know if this can meet the requirements of seniors. There is such a thing, of course, it is okay to deal with anyone. The Yinlai San stared at Wei Suo and sneered. It seems that your fire spirit root was also cultivated with this Fire Fairy Lotus? I don't have any extra hydrangeas in my hands, and if there are, I can also make some deals with you. Wei Zhuo shook his head. Only these 2 pieces remain on hand. Let's go after the silver carp looked at Wei Suo coldly. He didn't say much, turned around and walked out towards the red mask. The shopkeeper Wang was also surprised by his heart and immediately followed Wei Suo out. He even has such things as Firefly Lotus. Now he is more and more sure that Wei Suo is not a general monk, and he feels that he is very wise in making Wei Suo. Yinlai Daiyu, was Lan Chengjing that day in that man's hand. But when he walked out of this unremarkable shop and saw the Yinlai Sanren walking all the way up to the top of Haixian City, the shopkeeper of Wang suddenly responded to something like that, and couldn't help asking with surprise. The silver carp scattered facelessly asked, in Haixian City, besides that person, can anyone else ignore the spells and exercises below the level of the heavens, and even the magical treasures below the level of the Dao? Don't look down on it at all. Wei Suoan heard a move in his heart. Wang's treasurer, is that the person you are talking about, is the golden patriarch Xuanhuan, ancestor of Haixianzong. Since the Yinlai Daiyu have said so. Who else will be besides the ancestor of Xuanhuan? Wang shopkeeper smiled bitterly. No, Wei Suo's heart burst into tears and laughter. He wanted Tianlan orange crystal, he wanted to steal the spirit of the seafood sect, but this transaction actually found the other ancestor's head up, which is almost the same as the thief asking the master to buy the key. Actually did a deal with the ancestor of Xuanhuan? Okay, haha. Use his Tianlan orange crystal to steal their aura, cool. The Jindan monk, Wei Suo, I won't come out, so I won't be found. Waiting for you. Good news. The voice of the old man in the green robe immediately rang in Wei Zhuo's ears, and immediately went silent. The Yinlai San people have been leading Wei Suo and Wang Zhenzi all the way up, and have passed all the dwellings in Haixian City, and walked out of the white light mask at the top of Haixian City. Is the king's shopkeeper. When the 3 people approached the periphery of the Baishan Lingguang mask, a disciple of the Haixian sect wearing a silver and white vest appeared from the Baishan mask. This disciple of the Haishanzong Zhou Tianjing 5 heavy practice is a gold-handed longsword with a silver sword sheath hanging on the back. The body has a very strong atmosphere of gold and iron killing. Obviously, it is a sword cultivation that has practiced some flying swordsmanship. This Haixianzong disciple recognized the king's treasurer, but he did not recognize the Yinlai Sanren and Wei Suo. The three seniors, don't know what happened to my Haixianzong. After seeing the king's shopkeeper, he was a little stunned. Road. You will inform your ancestor Xuanhuan that the Yinlai Sanren came to visit him. The Yinlai Sanren still looked cold, saying. A discreet appeared on the face of a disciple of the Haixian sect wearing a silver and white cassock. The ancestor left his oral training, and he didn't see foreigners during his sitting. I have an appointment with him. You go to report. He will naturally let us go in to see him. Yin Li Sanren's eyes flashed coldly snorted. Since that is the case, please ask the three seniors to wait a moment and report to them immediately. The on the face of this Haixian sect disciple hasn't changed. After nodding, he turned around and disappeared into the white. In the spirit of light. It's just that after a little bit of fragrant kung fu, I saw a glory of silver and white, and this disciple of the Haixian sect again showed up in the white spirit, and paid a tribute to the three people. Seniors, please follow me. The Yinlai Sanren had known this for a long time, and grunted uncomfortably, and did not greet Wei Suo and Wang's shopkeeper, and followed. Wei Suo and Wang Zhang looked at each other and immediately followed. I saw that this disciple of Haixian sect exuded a light green brilliance, leading the way. Wei Suo and Wang's shopkeeper didn't have any strange feeling at all, and passed through the white ray of Ten's photo mask. As soon as he passed through the white light mask, Wei Suo felt that the aura was rich and amazing. The spirit inside the Haixianzong mountain gate is at least 3 to 4 times thicker than the outside. That is to say, if a monk is practicing in the mountain gate of Haixianzong, one day is equivalent to absorbing 3 to 4 spirit stones more than the monks outside. This may not be a big deal for the monks above the split period, but for the monks in Zhenhai realm and Zhou Tianjing, the speed improvement of the cultivation is extremely amazing. For Wei Suo, it was also the first time to enter the mountain gate of Dezongmen. After a slight startle, he immediately looked up and looked up. After the white mask, it was clear, without any brilliance or fog, but I did not know what kind of magical power the monk's perception was limited by. The sight of a monk could have seen tens of miles and hundreds of miles away, but in this mountain gate, there was clearly no obstacle, but he could only see the scene within a mile or two. Wei Suo only saw pavilions stacked with jade and stone on both sides, carved with many runes. It seems that these pavilions themselves are also a defensive magic weapon. And a long order of white se, all the way up, is like an endless general, as if it leads to the sky. The momentum is amazing. At the end of the Bays Avenue, which is like a sky, is a majestic palace. A white jade door engraved with fish dragon patterns has a height of tens of feet, giving people an indescribable visual coercion. Standing on the white scale, there is a very small feeling. Behind the palace, it is the statue of the sea fairy with unusual charm. I could barely see the scene before me, and followed the disciples of Haixianzong on the white stairs to take a few steps. The white jade door of this palace suddenly opened. 3 Dao friends, we are greeted from a distance. A majestic voice could not be heard, and it came from the giant hall and fell. Immediately, a mass of white light emerged from the open white jade door and instantly reached Wei Suo and others. Wei Suo's breath could not help but stagnate. This group of white light is a white lotus platform with a diameter of more than 5 feet. When it appeared in front of them, it seemed to smash them all at once, but the lotus platform with this crushing power was in them. When he stopped in front of him, it was very gentle, even the gust of wind did not bring a trace. In the past, Wei Suo had also seen the Jindan monk Changfeng real man in Danjiao Resort, but the magical power of this ancestor of Xuanhuan was obviously far more than that of Changfeng real man. Please, the disciple of Haixian sect in front of him paid a respectful salute to the Great Hall of Respect, and immediately gave aside, making a gesture to Wei Suo and others to invite to the lotus platform. Wei Suo and Wang's shopkeeper followed the expressionless silver carp people to board. With the sound of boom, Wei Suo only felt the glory in front of her eyes, but for a short time, the lotus platform had penetrated into the white jade door and entered a giant hall. I saw an old man in yellow robe with white hair, standing in the giant hall with his hands down. This giant temple is more than 150 feet square and the center of the top of the temple is more than 40 feet high. A huge green stone is embedded in it and emits a soft blue light. There is no pillar in the whole giant palace, nor any decoration, but the surrounding walls are covered with the mysterious reliefs. Some are like star maps of countless stars, some are only strange lights. It was the gods wearing bizarre armor and holding various magical instruments. The aura in the giant hall is more than twice more than the outside, especially the huge oval blue stone on the top of the head. I don't know what kind of treasure it is, and it is in the soft blue light it emits next. There is a feeling of indescribable comfort. The old man in the yellow robe does not use any real element to stand quietly, but outside the body is a continuous cloud of yellow clouds. Golden Dan Fa Fa. This is only a golden monk phase. Double monk or more body aura is agitated, it is possible to generate a golden physique. Yin Lai Daiu, did you find something for me? The name looked a little kind-eyed. The old man in yellow robe with red face nodded toward the three people and said this to the Yinlai Sanren. The figure of the silver carp shook slightly, as if there was an invisible giant hammer in the air, knocking on him. Of course, shaking his hands, the Yinlai scattered people struggled, and shot a silver light towards the old man in the yellow robe. I didn't see any movement of the ancestor of the Xuanhuan. The silver light flashed and disappeared into his sleeve. The Xuanhuan ancestor looked at Wei Suo, who was under the pressure of his natural consciousness, but did not seem to be affected in any way, but his eyes could not help but flash. Yinlai Sanren, are you going to bring the shopkeeper Wang and this Taoist friend? Is there anything wrong? There is something you should need in this person. The Yinlai San people looked at Wei Suo, who looked at him with ease, and could not help flashing the surprised god. He wants a Tianlan orange crystal. Asterisk. No code in the night, so tired, everyone smashed some red tickets out, refreshing. Path to Heaven. Author, Wu Ziyi. Chapter 273. What do I need? Ancestor Xuanhuan, stunned slightly, looked at Wei Suo again with interest, and then the fierce light flashed in his eyes. I don't know how to call this Taoist friend. Younger Li Lin. Wei Suo replied, neither humble nor overbearing. The ancestor Xuanhuan groaned a little, as if he was thinking about something. After a while, he looked at Wei Suo. What is there on your body? Want to exchange a Tianlan orange crystal? Wei Suo was not a nonsense. He took out 2 pieces of fire fairy and threw them directly in front of him. I didn't see any movement of the ancestor of Xuanhuan. 2 pieces of red fire floating lotus were suspended in front of the ancestor of Xuanhuan. The white-haired Jindan monk looked at the 2 pieces of fire fairy lotus, and his face slowly showed a complex look of joy and slight regret. A moment later, the ancestor of Xuanhuan twitched his hands slightly and put these 2 ground fire fairy lotus into his wide sleeves. A bit of orange brilliance flew out of his sleeve again, slowly flew in front of Wei Suo, and fell into his hands. This orange brilliance is an oval orange spar the size of a pigeon egg, and the surface is covered with orange pit-like pits and lines. When it fell in Wei Suo's hand fell sharply. Shen, it is obvious that the weight of this small-sized spar is very amazing. This is the legendary Tianlan orange crystal that can be used to refine the magic weapon, which can enhance the power of the magic weapon. The shopkeeper Wang looked at this strange spar, and his thoughts had just surfaced in his heart. Only the ancestors of Xuanhuan said lightly, your 2 pieces of firefly lotus are indeed eligible for this Tianlan orange crystal. Yinlai Sanren, this is what you want. After saying that to Wei Suo, the ancestor Xuanhuan reached out a little, and a blue light flew to the Yinlai Sanren, and was immediately put away by the Yinlai Sanren. As it looks, it should be a piece of blue jade that records something. Do you have anything to do with the shopkeeper Wang? Xuanhuan ancestor asked, looking at the shopkeeper Wang again. The shopkeeper Wang immediately shook his head and said, the juniors just had some friendship with Li Daiyu. They went to the split phase monk exchange meeting today, so they came together and opened their eyes. There was nothing wrong. Your Wangjia business firm has done a good job and has attracted many monks for Haixian city. Ancestor Xuanhuan smiled indifferently and said, I am a little bit older, and you respect me as a senior. Since you come, I can't always let you walk in vain. This shield should be of some use to you. It should be my gift to you. As if grabbed out of thin air, the ancestor of Xuanhuan appeared in front of him with a silver one-man shield high enough to cover the front of a monk. This Dharma shield is covered with snake-like reliefs, and the silver light is very dazzling. As soon as the words fell, this Dharma shield was extended by Xuanhuan ancestors a little bit and flew to the king's shopkeeper. Thank you, Senior Xuanhuan. The king's shopkeeper who took over this shield, immediately expressed surprise and thanked him. Give me a meeting gift too. Wei Suo looked at this Dharma shield, and he was so excited that he wanted to die, and the hopeful ancestor Xuanhuan also gave him one. Because it is obvious that the aura on this magic shield is compelling, far beyond the spirit level middle grade, it seems to be at least a defensive magic weapon above the spirit level. But what made him extremely depressed was that after giving this magic weapon to the king's shopkeeper, the golden monk priest, who was not angry, nodded and said, I am not in close contact with you while I am still closed. More chat. Don't talk more with us. What does that mean? Is it a drop-off? And me, and I am a later junior, send me a meeting gift. Wei Suo couldn't wait to say that. But the ancestor of Xuanhuan didn't take into account his thoughts at all. After saying that, he waved his hand, and then the lotus platform carrying Wei Suo and others came in, and flew out of the giant hall again. Fly to the place where Wei Suo and others came in. 3 seniors please. The monk Haixianzong was standing on the white stairs before, and when he saw the lotus stand in front of him, he greeted Wei Suo and others with a humble gesture and made a gesture of invitation. After the 3 of them honestly followed the disciple of Haixianzong out of the white aura, the Yinlai scattered people did not even care about Wei Suo and the king's shopkeeper. Don't this guy know the reason why multiple friends are doing things well? Wei Suo glanced silently at the back of Yinlai Sanren, and immediately thanked the king's shopkeeper around him. Thank you this time. Where should I thank Li Daiyu? Wang's shopkeeper smiled with emotion. If you don't follow Li Daiyu, how can you get such benefits next time? After he paused, Wang's shopkeeper apologized again. Speaking of this, I haven't helped Li Daiyu so much. The 2 techniques that Li Daiyu wanted, Yangzi Bird Demon Pill and Tao Fahing, were not available for purchase. These things are extremely rare in themselves, and no one can guarantee to find them all at once. Wei Suo smiled bitterly and said to the shopkeeper Wang, these things are very important to me. I paid attention. Since Li Daiyu is a friend, you don't have to be too far away. Daiyu has informed me of her residence last time. As soon as I have news of these things, I will immediately know. The friend Wang Zhengui looked at Wei Suo and said. After the 2 said a few more words, Wei Suo did not directly enter his residence not far from here, but followed the king's shopkeeper all the way down and entered the Wang's business firm. About half an hour later, Wei Suo came out of the Wangjia firm and went straight into his residence. Wei Suo, how are you back? As soon as Wei Suo entered the tower-shaped 3-story dwelling, Ji Ya heard the voice and quickly greeted him. Whether she can get the medicine to cure Hanwei Wei is of course extremely important to her. I only got a piece of golden lotus root, which is an elixir that can enhance the medicinal effects of Huanyang Hua and Yangzi Bird Yat, and the weak water stem of the lotus also got a Tianlan orange crystal, but the rest of the things were not obtained. Jiya's face was slightly white, and she was a little speechless. Don't worry too much. Wei Suo knew she was sad, and immediately took her hand to comfort. Although Yangzi bird is very rare, but at least it is not an extinct thing. Now that we are not strong enough, we will open it again. There are earth fire fairy lotus and other things in hand. Some are not safe, until we upgrade 1 or 2 levels of cultivation, and then if we can't find Yangzi bird demon again, I will let out the wind and use the land fire fairy directly. The lotus can be exchanged for the Yangtze bird demon pill. It's really not okay, and the purple fox flower can be exchanged for it. The earth fire fairy lotus and the purple fox flower are far more valuable for the rest of the monks. You can definitely get Yangtze bird demon pill. It turns out that you have already made a plan in your heart. Jia stunned, looking at Wei Suo's eyes suddenly different. You only have a purple fox flower in your hand, you are willing to. Isn't that your nonsense? Wei Suo's eyes turned, and he suddenly smiled embarrassedly. I still think about how she said to her after she woke up, that I and you have become double fellows. Jiya's jade face suddenly turned slightly red. Seeing Jiya's appearance, Wei Suo's heart suddenly became a little unreliable, and all of them were old wives and old wives. Sometimes Jiya was ashamed as a little girl, and the more this expression, Wei Suo the more unbearable. Good wife, I was busy cultivating the black water lotus 2 days ago, but I forgot to practice Shuangziu, or should we make it up now? This matter of improving cultivation can't be lazy. Upon hearing Wei Suo say this, Jiya looked startled, and then flushed his face, glaring at Wei Suo. After finishing the big things first, you get a Tianlan orange crystal, the rest of the materials are all. Are you ready? Of course you are ready, Wei Suo said proudly. Except for a piece of Tianling chalcedony, I have bought the rest of the materials today at the Wangjia firm. That day, the chalcedony Wangjia firm was also available in other cities. It should be delivered directly to you tomorrow at this time. I'm going to make up Tiandan. When Wei Suo said this, Jiya's eyes flicked, and she fled into the Tianhuo furnace very coyly. I will also visit to see how much your alchemy technology is higher than mine. Wei Suo smiled and immediately followed. Right, good wife, I said I missed something. At the exchange meeting, I also got a living egg of a carrion butterfly. Why saw? What did you call me? Good husband. It's about the same. Ah, Weizhuo, don't be in the furnace room that day. Wrong call again. I think there is a monk's manuscript that says it is more exciting and double cultivation works better. A moment later, a rumbling chatter came from the Tianhuo furnace room. After a long time, Wei Suo's figure appeared in the quiet room on the second floor. At this moment, he has recovered his original appearance. Although his face is still 3 colors, it is obviously much lighter, and will soon disappear. In addition to the 3 brought by the golden spot ginseng fruit, in addition to this color, Wei Suo's skin also shone with a very lustrous luster. The Xuanhuan percent method, which is a double cultivation technique that reaches the mid-level of the heavens, is not only amazing for the enemy, but also harmonious between yin and yang. It also has great benefits for the body of the monk. At this time, although Wei Suo's face has not changed compared with that in Lingyu City, if a person he knows sees him, he may feel that he is a lot more handsome. This is the case with a wife. With Jiya, a double-hearted compatriot who is close to each other, Wei Suo can be said to be very satisfied with life. But after walking into the quiet room, the gentle smile on his lips slowly disappeared, and a dignified look changed. To be honest, although he comforted Jiya before, he was also very worried about Han Weiwei. And after all, it would be good to let Han Weiwei wake up one day earlier. The most important thing now is to improve your cultivation and strength as soon as possible. After his eyes flashed slightly, Wei Suo took out the ghost tank and set it aside, and then took out the black water lily and the weak water stem.